We are living in unprecedented times, aren't we? I was listening to a podcast a couple weeks ago, and the guy I was listening to said this about once a decade, we will go through some sort of crisis. And I was born in the late 70s, and so I don't remember much about that decade, but I do remember a little bit about the 80s. And I remember learning in school about the debt and banking crisis that we had just come through. And then in the 90s, the early 90s, it was marked by the crisis of the Gulf War, but my 90s was marked more by the flooding of my hometown that flooded half the city. And then I'm sure you can remember, if you were alive in 2001, exactly where you were on September 11th. I was brushing my teeth, getting ready to go to a college class in my senior year when the second plane hit the World Trade Center. And then 2008, we had the Great Recession where everything kind of pushed back for a little while, and that was our big crisis. And here we are in 2020 with COVID-19. One of the biggest crises that we've seen probably ever. It's a worldwide pandemic, and it's the most talked about subject. I would venture to say most of us probably have talked about or seen about or heard about or watched about this COVID-19 thing at least probably 100 times a day, if not more. And so times are different. We're asked to keep social distancing and asked to stay 6 feet apart from each other, and we're asked to wash our hands every 20 minutes for 20 seconds, and this thing has affected all of us, including the church. And so we've done some things different. Our building is empty during the week and on Sunday morning. And so it's different for us. And so we're finding new ways to minister to people, new ways to reach out to people, new ways to get the message that Jesus offers of hope out to our community. And because of you, we're able to do that. Because of you've been inviting and you've been sharing and you've been liking and commenting on all these videos that we're putting out, we're seeing more people being reached. We're seeing more people that have come in contact with Jesus. And so we cannot wait until we get to gather again on Sunday morning. But until that time, what do, right? Because we don't know when that is. And these are uncertain times because this virus that we're experiencing is extremely contagious. It's crazy how fast it has spread across the globe. It's crazy to see that. One thing that this virus has done has allowed something else to spread faster, and that's fear. I've seen fear gripped on the people that we see on the news, and as I go to the grocery store, I see it. You can see it in people's eyes. And if we're really honest, there are more reasons for people to fear right now, aren't there? The stock market has gone haywire, the schools are closed, and people are losing their jobs, and businesses are closing, and there's more businesses that'll probably be closing, and the craziest thing of all this is, where's all the toilet paper? Like, I don't get that. And so, like, it's weird, and so, but we want to acknowledge that this is tough. This is a tough time. And other than just the how's life going to be when everything gets back to normal fear is the true fear that comes with this virus. The true fear that comes with contracting this virus. And the uncertainty that brings that we could possibly get it or one of our loved ones could get it. And the fear that I have that I might be a carrier and infect someone close to me. That I could do harm to someone that I love. You know, what if what I'm carrying rubs off on someone else and infects them? What if what I'm carrying could impact someone's life forever? What if what I'm carrying could impact someone's life for eternity? Because we're all carriers. Maybe not of the virus, but we're all carrying something. And what we're carrying infects other people. You might be carrying fear. And you're passing that around to other people by what you post online or what you say or how you act or what you do or the things you listen to. You see, when we encounter people, whether it's through social distancing or in person, what are you infecting them with? The question is what you're carrying worth catching? So how do we have faith over fear? We're going to spend a few weeks talking about that and just kind of unpacking these things of how we do have faith over fear? How do we become carriers of hope? How do we become carriers of the good news that Jesus offers? How can we be life givers, not life suckers? You see, the Bible is full of stories of uncertainty. If you've ever read through the Bible, you see these stories throughout. We'll start in Genesis. There's this guy named Joseph, and his dad has made him this coat, and it had a lot of colors, and his brothers became jealous, and he was always having these dreams about his brothers, and they didn't like what the dreams were, and so they plotted to kill him. And as they were plotting to kill, Joseph was hearing all this. He heard about his own brothers plotting to sell him or kill him, and so they ultimately decided to sell him. And so can you imagine the uncertainty that brought? Man, does my family even really love me? And then there's this other guy named King David. But before he was king, there was this uncertainty in his life of, when was I going to become king? You see, he was anointed to be the king when he was young. And after he was anointed, he went back to tending sheep and being a shepherd for a long time. And then before he was king and he was a general in Saul's army, Saul actually tried to kill him and was actually searching for him all over the country to kill him. Imagine the uncertainty, the promise that God had given to be king, and all these things. At any moment, Saul could kill him. And then there was a mother that was frightened that her baby was going to be killed. And so she took him and put him in a basket and put him in the Nile River to save his life. And that was a guy by the name of Moses, that we're going to come back to in just a second. And then there was another mother in the New Testament that was scared that her newborn son would be killed because there was an order out for everyone under the age of 2 to be killed. Every male born under the age of 2 to be killed. And so she and her husband and her son fled to Egypt. That was Mary, the mother of Jesus. And then there was Paul. Paul's entire ministry was marked by him being in and out of prison for preaching the gospel. You see, the Bible is full of stories of uncertainty, and we're going to look at one of those stories today, and it's found in Mark chapter 14. So if you have your Bible, you can turn there, or you can follow along in the Bible app with me, or the words, the scripture will be on the screen here as I read them. But we're going to look at one of the most uncertain times in the Bible, and really, I think one of the most uncertain times in the history of humankind. It's definitely one of the more dramatic events that we see. Jesus and his disciples were in the upper room in this story, and they were celebrating the Passover. Now, if you're not familiar with what the Passover is or was, the Passover was an event that they celebrated to mark their freedom out of slavery in Egypt. To mark their freedom, they celebrated this every year in the Feast of the Passover. They celebrated this to remember God's faithfulness, to remember God brought them through what seemed like a time of faithlessness. God was still there. They spent 400 years in captivity in Egypt, and the Jewish people were living as slaves. That 400 years of them answering or asking God for prayers and what seemed to go unanswered, 400 years of harsh treatment. They were celebrating this event. That someone finally stepped up, that God sent somebody by that little baby that was put in the Nile in that basket. His name was Moses. God sent him to go to Pharaoh and say, hey, you got to let my people go. And they're celebrating this event that happened in Egypt when they were let go of their slavery. They were let go to be free. And so Jesus and his disciples are celebrating this in the upper room some 1,400 years after that event. You see, but what was happening during this time was his disciples had started to become a little distracted. They'd started to think, there's something different in these days. Because just a few days ago, Jesus came into the city riding on a donkey, and people were yelling Hosanna, and now he wasn't coming to the city during the day anymore. He was actually like staying outside the city like an outlaw until sundown. And he told him, go into the city and you'll find a place by asking these people where to go, and I'll meet you there. And so the times had become uncertain, and the disciples were starting to ask these questions because they knew that a mob was arising to arrest and to kill Jesus. And Jesus kept talking about his death. And so they're wondering, what's going to happen? I don't know. And then there's this guy over here, one of the 12 named Judas, that's starting to act a little weird and a little funny. You see, everything they had grown accustomed to had vanished in the matter of a few days. And their questions that they had were becoming more, and the questions were arising more of like, what's going on? And then things got a little bit crazier as Jesus meets them in the upper room. And we'll pick that up in Mark chapter 14, verse 17. It says this: when evening came, Jesus arrived with the 12. When they were reclining at the table eating, he said, "Truly, I tell you, one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me." You see the reason why this is kind of like, they didn't question this a lot, because a lot of things that Jesus said, everything that Jesus said had a propensity to come true. And so they knew that this was going to happen. Verse 19, they were saddened. And one by one, each one, all the 12, one by one, they went through and they said, "Surely you don't mean me, Lord." Like, not a question of to who. Like, we'll go get them. We'll make sure that doesn't happen. All they're asking is, it's not me. So imagine what's going on in their head. And then Jesus says, "Is one of the 12, it's one of the people in this room, the one who dips bread into the bowl with me. The Son of Man will go just as it is written about him. But woe to that man who betrays the Son of Man. It would be better for him if he had not been born." Think of the tension in the room. Think of what's going on. Like, they're gathering for this feast. They're gathering to celebrate the yearly remembrance and mark of the Passover. Finally, some normalcy. Finally, we get back, like we get to hang out tonight. We just get to be normal for one evening. And then Jesus comes in and goes all, "Well, one of you guys is the devil, and it's going to be better that if you were never born." So put yourself in their shoes for a minute. Put yourself in what they're feeling in those moments. Maybe you can feel it right now. Everything was changing, and it's about to get worse. Their questions were becoming greater and wondering, was this really worth it? Was this really all? Is this all that was cracked up? Following this guy, losing my job and leaving my family? Was this really worth it? He doesn't even seem to be in control anymore. Like, he can't even come in during the day. He's got to wait till sundown so nobody sees him. If you grew up in church and you grew up in Sunday school like I did, you'll probably remember this song that we used to sing. He's got the whole world in his hands. Now, I'm sorry if you didn't grow up in church. Unfortunately, that song will be stuck in your head for the rest of the day. I apologize. But I remember in Sunday school, and you get through, he's got the whole world in his hands, and then he's got the itty bitty babies in his hands, and then he's got you and me brother in his hands, and then he's got you and me sister in his hands, and you'd come back to he's got the whole world. And I remember one of my Sunday school teachers, she added the word "still" in there, because we need reminding of that sometimes, that he's still got the whole world in his hands. And we need to be reminded of that during these uncertain times. That God is still on his throne. That he's still working. That he's still moving. We're seeing that, and I'll talk about that here in just a second. But let's go back to the upper room just for a second. Because we know the ending of this, don't we? Like, we know what happens. We know where Jesus is leading with this. We know, we see that, but I think a lot of times these words often get lost in knowing the ending. And the disciples are starting to get caught up in their woes. Look at verse 22. He says, "While they were eating, Jesus took the bread, and when he gave thanks, he broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying, 'Take it, this is my body.' Then he took the cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, and they all drank from it. 'This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many.'" Now, what Jesus is doing in these moments right here is he's foreshadowing the event that's about to take place in a few hours. He's foreshadowing the event that we celebrated last week with Good Friday and then Easter Sunday, where Jesus comes back to life. And he's foreshadowing this event that we have celebrated for 2,000 years after that. He's foreshadowing this event that has started wars. He is foreshadowing this event that is going to be the beginning of a movement that is still going today. You see, God is making his move when everything around him seems to be going backwards. And then the hits just keep on coming, don't they? Jesus just throws some more bad news out there. Look at verse 27, skip down there. He says this to all the disciples, all 12 of us, says, "You will all fall away. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you to Galilee." And then Peter, I love Peter. He just kind of opens his mouth. He says, "Even if all fall away, I will not." If you know the story of Peter, Jesus goes on to tell us, before tomorrow morning, you're gonna deny me 3 times. And I think a lot of times the same thing goes through our mind that went through Peter's mind right here when we're on the brink of uncertainty, when it quite hadn't hit yet. We sit there and we say, I'll never quit going to church. Man, this is awesome. I'll never quit reading my Bible. I'll never quit praying. I'll never quit this, or I'll never quit that. And then uncertainty happens. And we end up like Peter, falling away. I think if you interviewed all the disciples, this was their darkest time. These 3 days were their darkest period of their life. Everything they had known was getting stripped away in a matter of hours. But I think in that same interview, they would also tell you that this is the beginning. This is the beginning of God's plan for redemption. And so during this time of uncertainty, where you usually be at work, right? You usually be waking up tomorrow morning to go to work, or Tuesday morning to go to work, or Wednesday morning to go to work, or Thursday, Friday, whatever day you go to work, or when the kids are at home because they can't go to school and you're having to teach them, or you go to the grocery store and you can't find those necessities like toilet paper. You see, no one's doubting that this is uncertain times. But I want to tell you is that God is working. God is working. You see, we've been able to minister to people through this time that I don't know that would have ever been put in our path before this. God has put people in our path that we're able to minister to and to show them the love and the hope that Jesus offers. We've got new people watching every week here online. And if you're new this morning, thank you so much for watching. We welcome you, and I'm honored that you would join us. But we're getting messages every week about people watching and enjoying the services and understanding that it's down home and it's casual and they can relate. We've had the opportunity to feed people and to get out in our community and to use what our resources that we have to make sure other people are getting the resources they need. We have the opportunity to join with other churches just to be the church, to do what we are called to do. You see, even when we don't see God working, He's working. He's at work. You see, when life is uncertain, I'll go back to my Sunday school teacher. He's still got the whole world in His hands. You see, the good things come from broken things. Good things come from broken things. When we see that God is behind it, or we see that God is in it and that He's working through these uncertain times, these undesirable conditions, it changes things. You know what it changes? It changes the fear we may have into faith. And yeah, I know none of this will get us our job back, and none of this is going to pay our bills, and none of this is going to keep us in school, and none of this is going to restore your 401k. But you know what it does do? It allows you to maintain faith when fear is gripping and spreading faster than the virus. It allows you to go to bed at night with the confidence that God has not abandoned you. It motivates you to be on the lookout for His grace and His intervention. It'll keep you from leaning into the things you don't need to lean into. It'll keep you from reading those posts online that aren't uplifting. It will protect you from despair. It will keep you coming back to Jesus. And ultimately, it will keep you contagious with fear over faith. Father, I thank you today that we have the opportunity to worship you. God, I know these are uncertain times, and I know many of us out there don't understand or don't know what to do. We don't know how to react. We don't know where to turn. But God, I pray in these moments that we turn to you, that we look to you, that we put our everything we have in your basket. God, help us to exercise faith over fear. Help us to utilize your word. Help us to lean in to you. If you're listening and you're gripped by fear, and you don't understand maybe where this all fits in, Maybe you've lost your job, or you're not sure how you're going to pay your bills. I want to invite you this morning to lean into Jesus. I want to invite you this morning to lean into who he is. But I want to ask you and invite you to take that a step further. I want to invite you to lean into his church. Lean into his people. The book of Acts is clear on how the church operated. The book of Acts is clear that they came together and met the needs of everyone. And I want to invite you this morning, that's what we're here for. That's what our church is here for, to help you through these times, to help you through these uncertain times, to help you have faith when all it is fear seems to be on the forefront. So this morning, I want to invite you just to text the word help to our text number. It's 706-979-2438. And we'll reach back out to you any way possible. It's completely private. No one else will see it except the staff. And so we can keep everything private just between us, but we want to help you where you're at. We want to be able to reach out to where you are and help you in times of trouble. And so that just text the word help, 706-979-2438. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you back next week.